plan for Britain: quit the single market, but give MPs a vote on the final deal. She pledged tougher controls on immigration and issued a warning to the EU. No deal is better than a bad deal.
We do not seek to hold on to bits of membership as we leave. No, the United Kingdom is leaving the European Union, and my job is to get the right deal for Britain as we do.
The value of the pound soared after the long-awaited speech, but critics claim it's economically catastrophic.
It's not in our interests. It would do real economic damage, and it would threaten to change the very nature of the society that we are.
Also tonight, the warning about security at the Tunisian resort 6 months before 30 Britons were killed there. And the royals getting their heads together to tackle mental health.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. Britain will leave the European single market, Theresa May insisted today, as she finally outlined her long-awaited Brexit plans. The Prime Minister said it was the only way to ensure Britain could control immigration and curb the powers of EU judges. She warned the EU against trying to punish Britain and surprised many by allowing Parliament a final vote on the deal. But critics condemned her plans as economically catastrophic. Well, in a moment, the latest reaction from Downing Street, from Brussels and the City and across the UK. But first, here's our political editor, Robert Peston, on May's Brexit blueprint.
A morning exit to tell us about Brexit.
Good morning, what's the plan? Have you got a plan?
To tell us at last what leaving the EU would mean for how we keep ourselves safe, how we make laws, how we do business with the rest of the world.
We seek a new and equal partnership between an independent, self-governing global Britain and our friends and allies in the EU. Not partial membership of the European Union, associate membership of the European Union, or anything that leaves us half in, half out. No, the United Kingdom is leaving the European Union, and my job is to get the right deal for Britain as we do.
So what deal did she say she wanted here at gilded Lancaster House in a speech to ambassadors from Europe and many other important nations?
We will pursue a bold and ambitious free trade agreement with the European Union. This agreement should allow for the freest possible trade in goods and services between Britain and the EU's member states. But I want to be clear. What I am proposing cannot mean membership of the single market.
To the delight of her more Brexit-loving ministers, such as Boris Johnson and Liam Fox, she said leaving the single market, where companies bear no tariffs and face common rules, would save us some money.
The days of Britain making vast contributions to the European Union every year will end.
As for the customs union, which protects our businesses from costly checks on goods as they cross borders, if possible, she would like to be a half member of that. But what if Europe doesn't give us the new trade deal she wants?
That would be an act of calamitous self-harm for the countries of Europe, and it would not be the act of a friend. No deal for Britain is better than a bad deal for Britain, because we would still be able to trade with Europe. We would still be free to strike trade deals across the world, and we would have the freedom to set the competitive tax rates and embrace the policies that would attract the world's best companies and biggest investors to Britain. And if we were excluded from accessing the single market, we would be free to change the basis of Britain's economic model.
And if she does pull off a deal, she won't be the only judge of whether it's up to scratch.
I can confirm today that the government will put the final deal that is agreed between the UK and the EU to a vote in both Houses of Parliament before it comes into force.
The reason Mrs May confirmed we'd be leaving the single market is because her priority is to control immigration from the rest of the EU, which is impossible under single market rules. But as she said, she wants to negotiate a new free trade deal with Europe. And even if we have more control of our borders, the Prime Minister still wants to maintain the passportless common travel area with the Republic of Ireland. Now, since leaving the EU is supposed to be about returning power to Parliament, what would it actually mean that the final divorce deal will be put to a vote of MPs and Lords? If Parliament were to reject the final deal, would we still be in the EU?
I'm sure that the British Parliament will want to deliver on the views of the British people and respect the democratic decision that was taken.
A golden, glittering future for her and us, or will we be poorer and will Labour mess up her plans?
We have said all along that we will not block Article 50 coming in, and that's going to be very soon within Parliament. We will be putting a case for market access to Europe. We'll be putting a case for regulation of labour market and all the issues that go with that. We'll be putting a very strong case to the British people and to Parliament. This is 2 years away, and it's quite nice that at last we've got confirmation that 27 member state parliaments will get a vote, including ours, and of course the European Parliament also gets a vote on this.
For Scotland wanting to stay in the single market, is the Harvest a new independence referendum?
Well, I already said it was highly likely. The Prime Minister today, I think, has made it even more likely. I've done my best and will continue to do my best to compromise, but for a compromise to work, you have to have two willing partners.
So what did Brussels woman in Britain make of it?
I think it was very interesting, still not without ambiguity.
This is what another official in the hall made of it. Daily Mail fodder. In leaving the EU, the Prime Minister won't be able to please everyone all the time, so choosing who she wants to be her friends will make us richer or poorer. Robert Peston, ITV News.
Well, there has already been some reaction to the Prime Minister's speech in Europe. Germany's Chamber of Commerce said it will lead to firms scaling back investment in the UK. Well, our political correspondent Paul Brand is in Brussels for us tonight. So Paul, what have EU leaders been saying?
Well, in general, Mary, they've enjoyed the clarity of Theresa May's speech, if not always the reality of it. She's been having calls this evening with the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, and the President of the European Council, Donald Tusk. I'm expecting details of those calls any moment now. She's also going to speak to the French President and the German Chancellor this evening. But Donald Tusk, for his part, tweeted this afternoon to say this was a sad process, that these were surreal times, but at least the Prime Minister was now being realistic. Of course, the EU has always argued that she cannot pick and choose which bits of the EU membership we will retain when we leave. In fact, some in the EU are still accusing her of doing that this evening. For example, the European Parliament's chief Brexit negotiator, Guy Verhofstadt, saying she's under the illusion she can opt back in to bits and pieces.
Paul Brand in Brussels, thank you. Well, the value of the pound soared after Mrs May's speech today, contrary to some predictions that it would fall still further. Well, let's go to our business editor, Joel Hills, who is in central London. So a positive reaction then, Joel, from the markets so far?
Well, look, the performance of the pound has become a measure of confidence in the British economy, hasn't it? And as Theresa May spoke, as you say, the pound jumped in value. It had its best day trading since 2008, nonetheless. So, did this speech transform our prospects? Do they burn that much brighter? Well, no, not really. Take a step back and you'll see that the pound has fallen by about a sixth of its value since we voted to leave the European Union. And that devaluation is beginning to be felt. We learned today that in December, inflation hit 1.6%. In put another way, prices are beginning to rise. The squeeze on living standards may well lie ahead. But for now, Theresa May is in a position where she can sit down and begin talks with the European Union, confident in the fact the British economy, amid all this uncertainty, is actually performing rather well. Now, she seems to believe that leaving the single market can be a painless process, that trade can be tariff-free, companies will get access to the skills that they need, and that ultimately we will be okay. But she argued the opposite just a year ago, and companies know that negotiations lie ahead and that there will be compromise. She can't probably deliver on everything she's promising.
OK, Joel, thank you. Well, a referendum vote in June split the country pretty much down the middle. So what do the two halves make of the Prime Minister's speech then? Well, for our series Brexit Britain, we heard the view from Cambridge, where 74% voted to remain, and also from Mansfield, where 71% voted leave. And it's from there that Ben Chapman has the first of our reports.
It may have taken 7 months for Theresa May to work out what Brexit really means, but on Mansfield Market they say leaving the single market is what they wanted in the first place.
Why can't we trade with the rest of the world? Why do we have to join a club?
Clean Brexit. Out means out. Is that what you voted for?
Yes. I think that Britain can be great again on its own.
All the way. No holding back, no nothing. Just straight. Just get it sorted so we know where we're at.
This grocer believes in time it'll bring prices down.
When you buy stuff from outside the EU, it's dearer than buying it in the EU because they put taxes on it, which is unfair.
At this clothing company, they too believe it brings opportunity to sell British to the rest of the world. Its boss tells me clarity and optimism from the Prime Minister is long overdue.
We've had pretty well silence for the last 6 months, and the negative comments have been coming from all over the place. So let's hope that what Theresa said today, that we can use that and get behind her.
Their only fear is that giving MPs a vote could give them a chance to unpick Brexit.
If the MPs do what the constituents want, that's fine. But if the MPs do what the MPs want, another story.
But now people here know what Brexit will mean, they're looking forward to making a success of it. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Mansfield.
I think in the past we've tried to go up next. Voters in Cambridge overwhelmingly want to stay in the EU. In fact, 74% of them voted to remain. The city's high-tech companies are world-renowned. Encocam makes crash test trolleys. 80% of its goods are exported. Its managing director fears leaving the customs union could mean new crippling tariffs.
3.5%, 4% extra that we either have to charge our customers or absorb. That will affect either the size of our market access or it will affect our profits.
In the splendour of Trinity College, students idly watched Mrs May this morning. Not one was happy with her plans.
Theresa May's speech today obviously shows that she's taking a hard line on Brexit. And I think that could be seen as her pandering to the far right side of her party.
And making Britain stronger and using all of this powerful political speech. But at the end of the day, I worry about, the real economic effects of everything.
And one research scientist at the university is concerned her industry could suffer a major skills shortage.
If the government is really serious about this being the best place to do research and for innovation, they are going to have to allow very free movement of those bright minds that we need to fuel that process.
Theresa May hopes now to unite the country over Brexit, but few here are convinced that can happen yet. Emily Morgan, ITV News in Cambridge.
So there are the views then from Cambridge and Mansfield. Let's return to our political editor, Robert Peston, who's in Downing Street. Now, the Prime Minister's been facing calls for clarity. Is this clear enough? Has she got there?
Well, things are a bit clearer, but she's traded one set of uncertainties for a new set. Now, we know we're getting out of the single market, we're probably out of the customs union, but you couldn't really make this up. Theresa May says as we withdraw from one free trading arrangement with the European Union, she wants another free trading arrangement with the European Union, only a free trading arrangement that doesn't bring us all those things we don't like uncontrolled immigration from the rest of the EU or the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. Will the other EU 27 leaders give us our cake and let us eat it? Well, possibly not right now, given how aggressive she's been with them. I've been speaking to the EU ambassadors and they were quite shocked by how she warned them that she would go to commercial war with them if they don't give her what she wants. And there's another uncertainty, which is she's now promised MPs and Lords a vote on the final deal. Goodness only knows what would happen if they voted it down.
OK, Robert Peston in Downing Street, thank you. Let's move on to the rest of the day's news now. The UK government was warned about security concerns at the Tunisian hotel where 30 Britons were shot dead months before the attack. The inquest into their deaths was told today that a report had highlighted weaknesses at the beach entrance to the hotel in Sousse. Neil Connery has more.
The Sousse terror attack may have come out of the blue, but the inquest today heard evidence over earlier security warnings. Islamist gunman Saifuddin Rezgoué killed 38 people, 30 of them British tourists, when he opened fire. In 2013, another hotel in Sousse was targeted by a suicide bomber who tried to enter from the beach. And 6 months before the attack which killed the 30 British tourists, the inquests heard a report for the UK government had raised concerns about the Imperial Hotel's beach entrance. It noted despite some good security infrastructure around the hotels and resorts, there seems to be little in the way of effective security to prevent or respond to an attack. The Bardo Museum attack in Tunis 3 months earlier killed 20 tourists. The Foreign Office travel advice continued to warn of a high terrorism threat, but questions were raised about how effective the travel company TUI had been in making that clear. The inquest heard survivors Paul Thompson and his daughter had visited a TUI branch a month before Sousse, concerned about the Bardo attack. Andrew Ritchie QC, representing many of the families, said they were told that Tunisia was 100% safe. For the victims' families, the questions over whether earlier security warnings could have saved lives continue. Neil Connery, ITV News, at the Tunisia inquests.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, an 18-year-old is arrested on suspicion of murder of a teenage schoolgirl. And the mystery of flight MH370, 3 years on, the underwater search is called off. Those stories and more after the break. Join me then. Hello again, welcome back. The family of 16-year-old Leonie Weeks today laid flowers at the spot in Rotherham where her body was discovered. An 18-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of her murder. From the scene, Damon Green reports.
16 years old, a popular girl growing up in a small town. By the time her family reported her missing, she'd already lost her life. Today, that grieving family visited the place where she died, struggling to cope with the news that she was gone. The people of Dinnington, near Rotherham, say she'll be missed.
I don't know how anyone can be so cruel to do this to her. Because she won't hurt anybody. She's a nice person. She's a lovely lass. I just don't know why anybody would do this horrible thing to her.
Leonie Weeks' body was found on this track behind a supermarket car park, the victim of a violent assault. Today, investigators continue to search the area for evidence, and the senior officer in the case did his best to calm a family looking for answers.
We're working very, very hard to gather as much evidence as we can. Unfortunately, and it's difficult for the family, these things do take a lot of time, but it's really, really important that we do it methodically.
South Yorkshire Police put extra patrols on the street today to reassure local residents as Leonie's loved ones try to comfort each other. An 18-year-old man from Dinnington remains in custody on suspicion of murder. Damon Green, ITV News in South Yorkshire.
The missing Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 may never be found after investigators formally suspended the search. The passenger plane disappeared on its way from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing with 239 people on board, but barely a trace of it has been discovered, as Dan Rivers reports.
It remains one of the most perplexing aviation mysteries of the jet age. Almost 3 years after it disappeared, we still don't know what happened to flight MH370. Now, after 2 years of scouring the ocean, the search is on hold.
We need to suspend the search until further credible evidence.
For relatives of the disappeared, it's the confirmation they've been dreading.
There's no hope that he's ever going to be found, so we can never have a proper funeral.
The most commonly held belief is one or both pilots were responsible for downing MH370. Terrorism, including hijacking, is another theory, although less likely as pilots can rapidly send emergency distress calls. It's why engine failure is also unlikely. But experts say the wreckage must be found.
It is very vital to find the aircraft and the cause so that we can learn from each aircraft accident.
But the search has already cost more than £100 million. Without new evidence, the families of the 239 people aboard will never know the truth. Dan Rivers, ITV News.
Southern Rail drivers have suspended plans to strike next week. Representatives from the ASLEF union and Southern's parent company have agreed to meet on Wednesday. The RMT union still plans to strike on Monday. And a man has been arrested on suspicion of causing an explosion which destroyed 2 houses in Manchester. He's one of 5 people injured in yesterday's blast. And finally, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry joined forces today to urge more people to talk about mental health. The royal trio launched the next phase of their Heads Together campaign, as Rebecca Barry reports.
Personal stress, work issues, whatever it is.
Having conversations about mental health. This is what the younger members of the royal family want everyone to do, because royalty or celebrity or not, mental health problems can affect anyone.
There are times when, whoever we are, it is hard to cope with challenges. But for too long, it has been a case of keep quiet and carry on. As a result, too many people have suffered in silence for too long, and the effects of this can be devastating.
The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry are promoting their Heads Together campaign, the charity of the year for the London Marathon, and want to remove the stigma surrounding mental health.
Fear or reticence, or a sense of not wanting to burden another, means that people suffer in silence. So the question that William, Harry and I have asked ourselves is, how can we get more people to start talking? If we succeed with this, we will have taken a powerful step in normalising mental health as an issue in our society.
I suffered from mental health problems.
John knows the importance of talking. His father had depression and killed himself, and John later attempted to take his own life.
When I was in hospital, I was prescribed a lot of different tablets, but the one thing that wasn't supplied to me was talking. And so it was actually by turning to a friend that was really important, and actually it was the talking that made me better, not the pills.
John is running the marathon to raise money and awareness, and hopes these high-profile supporters will get people talking. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
And that is all for now. Julie is here with news at 10, but from me and all the team, have a great evening. Bye-bye.